Can you imagine living in a place where hunger is routine, where half the children are malnourished, and many families go all day without anything to eat? Welcome to Burundi, the poorest and unhappiest country in the world. Here, roads are non-existent, railroads have never arrived, and bicycles are used to carry bags of food over long distances. It sounds impossible, but this is the brutal reality of a forgotten country. Want to know what makes Burundi the poorest country in the world? Then stay until the end, because today we're going to reveal the extreme challenges that condemn this nation to misery. Number 1. Location and geography. Landlocked and in the heart of Africa, Burundi borders Rwanda to the north, Tanzania to the east and south, and the Democratic Republic of Congo to the west. And to complete the picture, Lake Tanganyika bathes the western border, creating impressive landscapes. The country is a true geographical mosaic. In the center, the Mugamba Mountains reach an altitude of over 2,600 meters, while on the shores of the lake, the terrain drops to 800 meters. This contrast creates landscapes that vary between green hills and deep valleys. Despite being close to the equator, the climate is pleasant. In the mountains, the average temperature is around 20 degrees Celsius. In the lower areas, the heat is more intense, but nothing exaggerated. Now, if you're the type who loves to know about the size of places, here's an interesting fact. Burundi is about 27,000 square kilometers. To give you an idea, Burundi is smaller than a country like Belgium, which is already considered a small country in Europe. It also fits neatly into Switzerland, which is famous for its mountains and small size. But don't let the size fool you. Despite its small size, the country has a population of over 11 million people, making it one of the most densely populated countries in Africa. This means that, even though it's tiny, Burundi is a veritable human anthill with lots of people living and working there. Number 2. Lake Tanganyika. Now that we know where Burundi is and the size of its territory, it's time to talk about one of its greatest natural gems, Lake Tanganyika. This is no ordinary lake. It is simply the second largest freshwater lake in the world by volume and the second deepest, second only to Lake Baikal in Russia. This means that Lake Tanganyika is a true wonder of nature, full of mysteries and aquatic life. The lake stretches across 4 countries: Burundi, Tanzania, Zambia, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, covering an area of approximately 32,000 square kilometers. In other words, the lake is bigger than Burundi itself. And with a depth of up to 1,500 meters, we're talking about a veritable aquatic abyss. But why is Lake Tanganyika so special? As well as being one of the largest freshwater reserves in the world, it is home to a unique biodiversity. There are more than 250 species of endemic fish, i.e., those that do not exist anywhere else on the planet. Many of these fish are known for their vibrant colors and exotic behavior, making the lake a paradise for aquarium lovers and researchers. But Tanganyika is not all fish. Number 3. The land of the killer crocodile. Lake Tanganyika is not only a natural paradise, but also home to a true legend, Gustave, the crocodile who is practically a celebrity in Burundi. And why is he so famous? Firstly, because of his colossal size. It is estimated that he is over 9 meters long and weighs more than a ton. But what's really frightening is its reputation for having devoured more than 300 people over the years, making it one of the most dangerous animals in Africa. Gustave has survived countless capture attempts. It is said that he has been the target of bullets, but his skin is so tough that it appears to be bulletproof. Researchers have spent years trying to understand how he has managed to escape so many attacks. Several traps were set, even using goats as bait, but Gustav always managed to escape. Although a few smaller crocodiles were caught, Gustav never fell into the traps. He seemed to know exactly where and when not to show up. The last confirmed sighting was in 2015, when he was seen dragging a buffalo along the shores of the lake. Since then, his whereabouts have been a mystery. There are rumors that he may have been killed, but nothing has been confirmed. No hunter has claimed the feat, and his legend lives on in the waters of Tanganyika. Could he still be out there, hiding in the murky waters, waiting to write another chapter of this story? Number 4. History. And while we're on the subject of history, before we go on to explore Burundi's curiosities, it's worth knowing a little more about this small African nation, which has undergone many transformations. Unlike many African countries, Burundi's borders were not drawn by Europeans, but reflect the territory that the Burundian monarchy has developed over the centuries. The Twa, Hutu, and Tutsi peoples lived together and fought for space there long before the colonizers arrived. But the balance of this society changed at the end of the 19th century, when Europeans began to divide Africa. Germany was the first to grab the piece that included Burundi, along with Rwanda and Tanzania, forming the colony of German East Africa. But the Germans didn't stay there for long. When they lost the First World War, Belgium, which already had the Belgian Congo next door, took control of the region in 1916. And that's when things started to get even more complicated. With the ethnic divide becoming increasingly fierce, the Belgians decided that the Tutsis, whose physical appearance was more in line with the European standards of the time, being taller and lighter-skinned, should occupy positions of power. The Hutus, who were in the majority, ended up on the sidelines, which planted the seeds of a conflict that would explode years later. When Burundi gained independence in 1962, the hope of better days soon gave way to coup d'etat and violence between Hutus and Tutsis, culminating in the Civil War of 1993, which is our next topic. Number 5. The Civil War. If Burundi's history was already full of twists and turns, 1993 was the year when things really exploded. With the holding of the country's first democratic elections, it seemed that a new chapter of hope was opening up. The president elected was Melchior Ndadaye, the first Hutu to hold this position. To understand the importance of this, you have to remember that although the Hutu represent the majority of the population, historically they have always been marginalized and excluded from political power, which was in the hands of the Tutsi, the privileged minority during the colonial period. But this hope was short-lived. Just 4 months after taking office, Ndadaye was assassinated in a military coup. This triggered a wave of violence and reprisals that resulted in a brutal civil war between Hutus and Tutsis. The conflict, which lasted more than a decade, left more than 300,000 people dead and millions displaced, living in precarious conditions in refugee camps. The Civil War only officially ended in 2005 after many negotiations and the signing of a peace agreement. However, even after the end of the conflict, ethnic tensions and political instability continue to be a challenge for the country. Since then, a series of conflicts involving the Tutsi and Hutu ethnic groups have taken place in the country, resulting in hundreds of thousands of deaths and refugees. Number 6. Poorest country in the world in terms of GDP per capita. Thanks to these conflicts, we come to a topic that unfortunately is nothing to be proud of: the country's economic situation. Most of the population lives on less than $2 a day, which puts the country in the sad ranking of the lowest GDP per capita in the world at around $900 a year. This means that basic necessities such as food, health, and education are unaffordable for many. Believe it or not, more than 70% of the population is undernourished, and life expectancy is just 50 years. For comparison, in a country like the United States, for example, the GDP per capita is around $78,000 a year, while in Spain it is around $30,000. In other words, the average Burundian lives on what an American spends in a day, and what a Spaniard spends in a week, over the course of an entire year. With an economy dependent on agriculture, which accounts for 40% of GDP, the lack of infrastructure and endemic corruption make progress almost impossible. And as if that weren't enough, the country still relies heavily on foreign aid for essential areas, further complicating the situation. Number 7. Hunting and the disappearance of certain species. In addition to economic and social problems, Burundi's wildlife is also suffering from the effects of poverty. The country, which used to be covered by dense tropical forests, now has only small patches preserved in higher and more remote areas. On the plains and lower slopes, the vegetation has been replaced by savannas, with much less biodiversity. The expansion of agricultural areas, necessary for the survival of families, has destroyed the natural habitats of many species. As a result, animals end up moving closer to urban areas in search of food, making them easy targets for hunting. Subsistence hunting is common, as agriculture is unable to feed everyone. When this practice intensifies, many species become endangered. Illegal hunting for the wildlife trade is another problem. Elephants and rhinoceroses, for example, are often hunted because of the high value of their tusks and horns on the black market, which only worsens the situation. Number 8. Gitega, the capital. After talking about Burundi's economic challenges, it's time to take a tour of Gitega, the country's current capital. Actually, it will be one of the capitals, because according to the rulers, Gitega will be the political capital, while Bujumbura will remain the economic capital. During the colonial period under both German and Belgian rule, Gitega was already seen as a strategic point, right in the heart of the country. And it was precisely this central location that led to the decision to make it the political capital in 2018 under the government of Pierre Nkurunziza. The idea was to decentralize power and promote development in other regions, since Bujumbura concentrated a large part of government and economic activities. The move sparked controversy, especially since a few years earlier China had built a luxurious presidential palace in Bujumbura, valued at more than $20 million. Many wonder, was the investment worth it? Number 9. Bujumbura. And since we're talking about one of the capitals, nothing could be fairer than talking about the other, right? That's why our next destination is Bujumbura. Located on the shores of Lake Tanganyika, Bujumbura is the economic heart of the country and a place that mixes urban bustle with a touch of lakeside life. Here, commerce is strong and the streets are full of life. The central market is the meeting point for those who want to feel the pulse of the city. There, you'll find everything from fresh food to local handicrafts, all mixed together amid lots of chatter and bargaining. The city also faces its challenges. Infrastructure is still a problem in many neighborhoods, and services such as water and electricity are not always available to everyone. For those who like to explore the local culture, the city offers some surprises. The Burundi Living Museum, for example, showcases the country's history with ancient artifacts and reconstructions of traditional villages. Bujumbura may no longer be the official capital, but it is still the place where everything happens, whether for business, culture, or just a good chat by the lake. Number 10. Burundian Percussion. When it comes to Burundian culture, there's no getting away from the drums. These instruments, which are made from tree trunks and covered in animal skin, are not just for making music. They carry centuries of history and symbolize power and tradition. In ancient times, they were used in important ceremonies, such as harvest rituals and royal events, and could only be played by men of certain lineages, which only increased the reverence surrounding them. These drums are so important to the Burundian people that in 2014, UNESCO recognized them as intangible cultural heritage of humanity. But over time, this practice has been threatened by social and political changes, making it difficult to continue this tradition. Today, the tradition still lives on, especially at cultural events and international competitions. One of the best-known groups is Les Maîtres Tambours du Burundi. They take the tradition of Burundian drumming all over the world, combining rhythm and dance in a way that is heart-wrenching. Number 11. The source of the Nile. As we continue our journey through Burundi, let's explore a fascinating curiosity: the possible source of the River Nile. Everyone has heard of this legendary river, the longest in the world, which runs for thousands of kilometers until it flows into the Mediterranean in Egypt. But the big question is, where does it really begin? While many point to Lake Victoria in Uganda as the starting point of the White Nile, Burundians have a slightly different take on the story. They believe that the Nile's journey begins at Mount Kikizi in the south of Burundi. It is there, amidst the mountains and lush vegetation, that a small spring emerges and gives rise to the Ruvyironza River. This river, in turn, joins the Kagera River, which flows into Lake Victoria. In other words, if we take this theory into account, the source of the Nile would be located on Burundian soil. And this is a source of great pride for the country. This discovery attracts onlookers and adventurers to the famous Source du Nil, a tourist spot marked by a stone pyramid celebrating the place where it all begins, or so Burundians believe. Number 12. Banana beer. If you think beer is only made from barley, hops, and water, it's time to learn about one of Burundi's most interesting traditions: banana beer. Yes, that's right. In a country where bananas are one of the most widely grown foods, Burundians have found a unique way of transforming the fruit into an alcoholic drink that is appreciated by many. The process of producing urwarwa, as it is called locally, begins with the harvesting of ripe bananas, which are peeled and mashed. The mixture is then combined with water and left to ferment. And here comes a special touch. Some communities still use grass during fermentation to speed up the process. After a few days, the liquid turns into a cloudy, sweet, and slightly alcoholic drink that is consumed at various celebrations and social gatherings. Number 13. Coffee country. But the banana is not the only star of Burundian agriculture. What if I told you that that cup of coffee you love could have come straight from the mountains of Burundi? That's right, this nation may be poor, but the soil is extremely rich and produces high-quality coffee, especially the Arabica type, which grows in the country's mountainous regions. With volcanic soils and an ideal climate, coffee plantations spread across the hillsides, resulting in beans that are appreciated all over the world. No wonder it has become one of the main exports, representing a significant part of the local economy. Number 14. A country without railroads. Remember how we talked about Burundi's lack of infrastructure? Well, that goes for transportation too. The country is one of the few in the world without any railway lines, which makes life very difficult for those who need to get around. Without railroads, everything depends on the roads, which are not always in good condition. This makes transporting goods more expensive and hinders trade within the country and with its neighbors. There are plans to build a train line connecting Burundi to other countries in the region, such as Tanzania and Rwanda, but as yet these projects have not been put on paper. Until then, the Burundians continue to improvise with the resources they have. Number 15. Transporting bananas. And to round off our list of curiosities, if there's one thing that exemplifies the spirit of improvisation and resistance of the Burundian people, it's the transportation of bananas. With no railroads and poor roads, farmers have to be creative to get their goods to markets. The bicycle, which in many places is just a common means of transportation, here becomes a real working tool. Farmers pile large quantities of bananas onto their bikes, forming walking yellow mountains. And off they go, balancing these huge loads, often pedaling for kilometers on dirt roads and up and down hills in order to sell the produce. If you've been fascinated by Burundi's impressive nature and rich history, don't stop here. Keep exploring the channel, as we have many other amazing destinations for you to discover. Turn on notifications to be the first to know about our next videos. And if you're not already part of our community, sign up now and come and embark on this journey through our Bello Mundo with us. To those of you who have watched so far, thank you very much, and we'll see you on our next adventure.